Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network. Welcome back to the show. We are talking about the 5 keys to product success, and we are joined by our expert here and owner of the company Spice Catalyst. This is David Fradin joining us here live today, and we're excited to have him back. How are you?
I'm doing great. How about yourself?
I'm doing great. Better when I look at your background, of course, in Maui. We're in New York, and you're based right now in California, correct?
Correct.
Perfect. Well, tell us a little bit about what it is you do before we get started for today's show.
Well, I teach the 5 keys to product success to companies worldwide. I have a number of books, including a textbook, which is used in executive management courses at universities. And my number one client is Cisco. And between myself and my instructors, we've trained about half of all the product managers at Cisco worldwide, not only in the United States, but also in Europe and in India and in China.
Beautiful. And we're excited you're back. We got to urge everyone to reach out to contact you all. That's spicecatalyst.com. Is that the best way we can reach you?
Yep. Connect with me on LinkedIn. Just search for my name. And if you're interested in my books, just search for my name on Amazon, pretty much any place in the world. There's even a translation of one of the books into Vietnamese.
Oh, beautiful. Well, thank you for sharing that. And by the way, books, plural, there's plenty of them. You could also just go to the website and find a link there. Google his name. And here you are talking about, the product marketing that you do, the consulting, the management, the training. And we're excited to have you back to discuss more today about our training. And should I say product strategy is the word I'm looking for. And
right.
To keep in mind, we're here talking about that. We started last week talking about the product market strategy, went over the importance of values, the vision, your mission statement, understanding the customer, and being innovative. Now, for today, we're going to continue that show. Do you want to give a little recap to what we were discussing and then bring it into life now to our target customer?
Well, we started talking about some of the key 32 components of a product market strategy. And the 5 keys to success is embodied in the mnemonic SPICE, hence the name Spice Catalyst.
Yep.
The S stands for strategy, the P stands for repeatable processes, the I stands for having the information necessary to get the job done, the C stands for understanding the customer, and the E is making sure that your employees and your consultants, between all of them, you have all 130 competencies or skill sets in order to have successful products. And why this is so important is about 35% of all new products each year fail in the marketplace, which represents a waste of about $1 trillion or more per year.
Wow.
So you already mentioned the key components of the first part of the product market strategy. And what I wanted to talk about today is personas, market and competitive research, how to do that, and some technology insights into some of the major things that will be affecting our businesses and our societies over the next few years.
Perfect. All right. Well, thank you for sharing that. And we're excited to get started. And let's talk about the personas aspect first and about bringing to life the target customer, right?
Yes. And the key here is that we're talking about the product market strategy. Market is like a grocery store. It's a place where you go to buy something. Marketing is the act of trying to get people to go to that store and buy your product. But you can't have a good marketing plan unless you also have a product market strategy plan. And the first part of that is the persona, which brings to life the target customer. Mm-hmm. I recall when I took over as the group product manager for the Apple III, I asked a bunch of the marketing people, many of them who had MBAs in the marketing departments at Apple, who did you build this product for? What's the persona? Who's the target customer? And none of them could answer that question. So I then went downstairs in the Triangle building, which is along Highway 280 and Lawrence Expressway in San Jose. And in the basement was a guy by the name of Jeff Raskin, Raskin. And Jeff was one of the key architects of the Apple III. He also was key architect of the Macintosh, which Steve after he got fired as the product manager for the Apple III, for which I took over a couple, three product managers later, went and took over the Macintosh vision of a graphical user interface and a mouse, which had never been done on a PC before, except at a little bit at Xerox PARC,
Wow.
the Palo Alto Research Center at Xerox. So I went down to talk to Jeff. Who did you make this product for? And he described to me the persona of the office worker and the small and medium business worker, because there were severe technological limitations on what the Apple II could do. For example, it was very difficult to type a sentence because there was no cap key so that you could capitalize a sentence. You had to press a coordination of a bunch of keys in order to get a capital at the beginning of the sentence. If you wanted to print something that was letter quality, back then we had thermal printers and ink, what do I call them? It was ink, but it was pounded ink, not inkjets.
Wow.
Yeah, or a selector typewriter, which was letter quality, and it could not support a selector typewriter type of printer. Laser printers didn't exist yet. It also had a severe limitation on memory. It also could not address anything over 143 kilobytes because the operating system, which was written by Steve Wozniak, was written in just a couple, 3 weeks so that Steve could go to Comdex in Las Vegas. He'd never been to Las Vegas before, and he never dreamed that mass storage would be more than 143 kilobytes. So with those limitations in mind, Jeff Raskin and his team designed the Apple III product, which was built for the persona of people that work in small and medium business and in offices. So what a persona does is it tells you who's going to be buying the product.
Okay.
It something about their demographics, and if you have it available, firmographics. For example, Cisco sales office in Germany, and at that time, it was about 10 years ago, has hundreds of products, but they don't know which products they should be going out and trying to sell in that particular geographic region. So they looked at some firmographics, which is a compilation of information from the Census Bureau, from Dun & Bradstreet, from Better Business Bureau, those kinds of things. And they found that some of their products would be best in satellite sales offices, for example, of companies that are Fortune 500 and above and have 100 people in each sales office. So they knew exactly which products they ought to be selling. They went out and they increased their sales for that sales group by like 20 or 30% over the previous year. So the persona tells you that. It also tells you what's the education level of the people that you're trying to approach, what their responsibility is in their job at wherever they're working, what's their role in their purchase, and I'll talk more about that in a moment, what they're added to towards are, what their reputation is, what are their values, fears, pet peeves, and most importantly, later for marketing, where do they get their information? Do they get it from the New York Times? Do they get it from the Washington Post? Do they get it from the Wall Street Journal? Do they get it from Twitter? Do they get it from TikTok? Do they get it from Facebook and so forth? So with that information on hand, the marketing plan can be put together to then communicate the value proposition to where the people they're trying to sell to get their information from.
Wow.
Then the key thing is that there's actually three kinds of personas. If I was selling a toy, for example, the three kinds of personas is the user, the influencer, and the buyer.
Okay.
The child is.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Jill Nicolini.
Well, he's certainly not the buyer because he doesn't have the money. That's the parent. He's going to be the user, certainly, that will be playing with it. He'll also have the persona of the influencer, having watched too many Saturday morning to influence the parent to be the buyer. And the arguments to each of them are different. For example, when I was selling a personalized recommendation service to Sears to put on the Sears.com website, this would be about 15 years ago, the user of that Sears.com is the average person that would be searching to buy something online. The influencer would be somebody in their family or their company. Like if it's a husband that's shopping, the wife is going to be an influencer, and that's a different persona. And the buyer would be somebody completely different. That is the one with the pocketbook. For all of this, about understanding the persona of the prospective customer, is what they do, why they do it, when they do it, who do they do it with. And that begins to get defined here in the persona level, which will later come out under the C of Spice and understanding the customer, which we'll talk more about in a later episode of this show. And you have to track all these things because these things change over time. And circumstances that we'll talk about later in terms of the perfect storm will change all of these things. For example, the COVID virus pandemic certainly changed the way people purchased food, the way they bought from restaurants, for example. And some of those changes continue to persist for better or for worse to this day.
Beautiful.
That's pretty much it for the persona.
Great. Next up is?
Doing market research and competitive research. And the key there is, and I've done both. I used to be the associate director of the personal computer industry service at a very prominent market research firm back in the 80s called DataQuest. So we did primary research by calling and surveying the little less than 100 personal computer manufacturers around the world and asked them how are their sales going, what their sales were, who are they selling it to, what market segments, and so forth. And we would publish a weekly newsletter and then an annual report on the status of the personal computer industry. So you can always get your information from the secondhand sources, but if their methodology is not accurate, then you're going to have problems. An example of that is I used to be a product manager of the Information Systems Networks Division at Hewlett-Packard in the Office Systems Group. And one of my products was a executive report writer that ran on the HP 3000 mini computer. And I needed to know, in order to sell this product, how many HP 3000s were out there, what software was running on it, and what's the nature of the companies that they were in. Well, none of that information was available, which is I in Spice. But it turned out that my product, HP Inform, which sat upon a data dictionary, would let me figure out the schema of each of the purchase orders issued from the sales offices.
Okay.
It's all boiled down to 256 characters because that's the largest amount of the line of data you could have on an IBM punch card at the time. And I was able to read all of that information off the magnetic tapes and found out exactly how many HP 3000s were out there, how many terminals were attached to them, what their memory and storage and printing capabilities and configurations are. And I forget the exact numbers, but I told John Celli, who is the marketing manager of that division, exactly how many HP 3000s were out there. And one day I was sitting in his office and someone from DataQuest, my future employer, called in their market research department and asked John how many HP 3000s had been sold. If I recall correctly, I had found that there was 7,000 in the installed base. He, in order to come up having the largest market share versus the Digital Equipment Corporation or Alpha General or IBM or so forth, said, oh, we sold 7,000. And then he finished his interview, hung up on the phone, and I said, John, why did you say 10,000 when there's only 7,000? He says, I just want to have the largest market share reported by DataQuest, which helps our business.
Wow.
And I thought about it for a moment, and I'm saying to myself, this guy just lied for his own benefit. And I thought about it more, where I didn't confront him with it. But let's suppose next year there's a different marketing manager, or John forgot that he said 10,000, and next year he says 10,000 or maybe 11,000. So instead of having a real growth of 20, 30, 40, 50%, he'll have a fake growth of maybe 10% or no growth at all. And the analysts will say that the company's business is stagnating.
Yeah.
Second major problem with that is if I was a software developer for the 3000, and in those days, and I think it still continues today, And I found from DataQuest that there was 10,000 out there. And then I could say I want to capture 5% of the market, and my product's going to sell for X dollars, which means I'll have Y gross dollars, and I can make a profit of Z. And I take that information to the venture capitalists and say, look at all the money we can make because we know there's 10,000 HP 3000s out there. Well, we go out there and we capture 5% of 7,000, which is 3,500, and we're short 1,500 in sales, which could be millions of dollars, and a lot of people get laid off and fired because the company's not making their numbers. So that's one of the dangers of secondary market research, and why it's so important to balance that with your own primary market research, which starts first with observing what it is that your customer is doing, surveying about 40 to 80 of them, interviewing about 40 to 80 of them, and then surveying somewhere between 800 and 1,200 of the target personas that you're going after. And that gives you real hard numbers that you can use to base your entire business model, your business plan on moving forward.
Got it. Well, thank you for that. And also, I just want to remind people who are tuning in, hearing you talk, they're saying, who's this guy? He's the Spice Catalyst. Yeah, go to spicecatalyst.com. And we're here again with David Fradin, and excited that he's here on this journey, teaching us so much. And again, we're talking about success, product market strategy. Again, for today, we're continuing that. And thank you for continuing. We still have some more time here, but I know I want to make sure we get through everything, which is hard. There's a lot. Let's continue.
Well, to continue doing your market and competitive research, first you have to understand that your customers cannot tell you what they want. Because in order for a customer to know what they want, they need to know what the problem is, and they need to identify the solution. And most people are not creative enough to define the problem and the solution. And to give you an example, Henry Ford, the inventor of the cost-effective car, allegedly went out into the streets of Dearborn, Michigan, not far from where I grew up in Detroit, and he asked people, would you like to have a car? Well, most people back then had never heard the term car or automobile, and they said, no, we want a faster horse. Well, if he had bothered to sit on the stoop of one of the saloons in Dearborn and drink a beer and watch people beat their horses with sticks to go faster through town, he, by observation, would realize that what they wanted was a faster horse, not a car or an automobile. Well, that mistake is also made today when people do part of their market research based upon what keywords people are searching for, which is helpful because that can tell you what problems people are trying to solve. But if someone back then had the internet in the early 1900s and someone did a keyword search for car or for automobile, they would have found that there's absolutely no market for a car or for an automobile, and therefore we wouldn't have all these streets and parking lots and so forth that we have today. So it's important to be creative enough starting from observing, interviewing, surveying, and then if you do have enough data, you can use big data to analyze keywords, and you can go further and find out
the makers of Madagascar
things
and
people want to do by that process. Then how satisfied are they with their current solution? So clearly, the person on a horse was not satisfied because it couldn't go too fast.
Yeah.
So they bought the horseless carriage, and that's why we have traffic jams over the Brooklyn Bridge these days. So that level of satisfaction can be used in a formula in order to help prioritize which features there are to build for your
Good morning,
product.
everyone. I'm Jill Nicolini. Well, there could be more trouble for Kevin.
Visibility into is 15 unmet needs.
Wow.
And before you have that, you can't have a successful product.
Gosh, and you with your background, clearly you know success, and I know your backstory, and if you guys don't know, you got to look him up and find out more about his bio and all he's done. So you've lived it. You've had struggles, though, right? I mean, and it's normal for people to go through, right? If you don't succeed, what did they say? Try again. So you got to also have that persistence, and I would just want to point that out, that it is possible. You just have to work on it sometimes and get some help.
Well, back in 2003, I was given credit by a major publication that followed the telecommunication industry for having invented the first advertisement on a cell phone. And I said, oh, this is a great idea. So I had a bunch of little funny things developed. One of them was a virtual cigarette lighter that you could see on the screen of your telephone. And we called it Encore Encore. And it was written up by the Los Angeles Times, where people went to a concert at the Hollywood Bowl and they wanted an encore, and they reached for their cigarette lighter and they forgot they had stopped smoking. But they had Encore Encore on their phone, so they turned on their phone with this virtual cigarette lighter, and they waved it back and forth, calling for an encore. Well, embedded in that app was an advertisement, and I had the product, the game, or Encore Encore. I also had a virtual fireplace called Light My Fire. I also had a virtual candelabra, so when you go out on a date, you can set up a very romantic candle on the table.
Come on. Oh, my gosh.
I had Maui mountain biking, where you...
wow.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Nicolini.
How is
all
that?
off the side of the mountain. You could say this crash was brought to you by Saucony running shoes or Zeal optics and so forth. Well, it turned out that I built these products for the Nokia telephones. Mm-hmm. I believe Nokia, and my secondary research told me that they had the largest install base of cell phones worldwide, which is true. So we got it done, put it out there, and immediately got 10,000 of these Encore Encore, Light My Fire, that kind of thing, installed in Europe. But my sales force to sell advertising was selling ads to companies in the United States that could care less about selling ads or showing ads in Europe. So my company, Maui Games, went out of business for two reasons. One is I didn't do my own primary market research. And two, I had not yet found 15 unmet needs, which was later satisfied when the iPhone came out a couple, 3 years later, and I had already spent all of my startup capital trying to get Maui Games going, so I had to put the company out of business. So that's why it's really important to get your market research done right.
Beautiful.
And understand the next topic, which is the technology insights and the things that are going to be affecting business and society over the coming years. One of those, of course, is climate change, and that has offered up many, many opportunities in terms of alternative energy, solar, wind, geothermal. It's even helped the goat population, which is being used to graze below the solar panels in the fields of Texas and elsewhere. And then, of course, the goats have droppings, which enriches the soil, and whole ecosystems are coming back under the cover of solar panels in a field. Climate change in terms of carbon sequestration, climate change in terms of rising ocean levels and so forth. All sorts of business opportunities there. Another area is autonomous vehicles. When we finally have a car that I can buy that will drive itself, I can send it out on the road when I'm in the office or at home, and it can be making money for me while I'm doing something else. And then the software will program it to come pick me up and take me home when the time comes. And then maybe if I'm smart, I'll send it out at night and it'll make some more money for me. And if we have all these cars moving around all the time, we won't need parking lots as many. And in fact, there are people in San Francisco that I've heard of are buying parking lots and converting them into housing. Wow. Another area is food innovations. We waste about half of all of our food, which has an enormous impact upon the climate. So innovations in the development and the growth of food, the distribution of food, the consumption of food, and the proper disposal of food moving into the future is going to have a number of different opportunities. Of course, additional pandemics, the NRV, invention, which enabled us to come out with a vaccine for COVID in a little over a year versus 5 to 10 years, offers additional opportunities in medicine. Gene splicing is another one. Augmented and virtual reality is another one. Big data, analytics, and wisdom of the crowds is another. Another concept is a digital twin. General Electric, which makes engines for jet aircraft, developed a digital twin for the actual engine. And using that data, if they've had and they have all all throughout the engine, they could notice something going on, and they could predict that one of the fan blades is about to break. So they could call the engine in and repair that fan blade before the engine blows up. We're beginning to develop digital twins for body organs and eventually for whole human beings, which will enable us to test vaccines and other pills and medical things in order to help people out with their particular illnesses. 3D printing is another one. My grandfather was born and raised in the Ukraine and became the blacksmith to the governor of Kyiv, and he was given $200 some by the governor in 1914 to get out of the country before they have their seventh pogrom in a little over 100 years. And he says, or you'll be killed, because he was Jewish. Well, I've got a cousin in Ukraine today with his 2 or 3 3D printers are making plastic fins for hand grenades that he sends through the mail to the front lines of the Ukrainian forces that they attach to hand grenades and drop these things on the Russians that are attacking the Ukrainians. All sorts of interesting opportunities in the 3D printing area.
Amazing. Well, unfortunately, we have to get moving, and we'll have to continue next week, so we have to end it there. David, how did you want to sum up today and remind people to come back for next week?
Well, there's 7 more of these perfect storm impacts, which I'll start talking about next week.
Perfect. Thank you so much. How can we contact you?
Go to my website, spicecatalyst.com, and my contact information is there. Search for me on LinkedIn and connect with me there.
Thank you so much. You have a fantastic day. And to all of our listeners, stay tuned. More of the show's coming right up after the break. Please stay with us.
Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
Of course my kid's in the right car seat. Well, I think he is.
Yeah, my kid's in a booster seat. He was ready to move up. He is ready, right?
Her car seat looks like the right size.
There are probably rules on when to move up to a booster seat, aren't there?
Rear facing, forward facing? I think I have it right.
Car crashes are a leading killer of children 1 to 13. Are your children in the right car seat for their age and size? Don't think you know. Know you know. Go to safercar.gov/the right seat.
I know my child's in the right car seat, or else I wouldn't get in the driver's seat.
Brought to you by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration and the Ad Council.